Hello and welcome to Las Blancas Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Las Blancas. We have four people here. One of them is happy, and three of them are Madridistas. We are here to talk about Real Madrid's game against Arsenal at the Emirates, which was the second leg of the UEFA Women's Champions League quarterfinals, which we ended up losing 3-0. That means Real Madrid are out of the Champions League. At the quarterfinal stage, after taking a 2-0 lead in the first leg, we lost the second leg 3-0. Goals from Alessia Russo and Mariona Calente saw us end up on the losing side. So today we are joined by Freddie and Hridyam, who were both at the Emirates. So we'll get some of like ground level details on the game and the crowd as well. So first of all, Freddie, welcome back, and Hridyam, welcome for the first time on Las Blancas. Freddie, congratulations. I'm sure you're doing well, but how are you feeling today after that win?
Yeah, I'm good. It's one of those games where, like the midweek games, when you get back late, it's hard to get to sleep. I had to get up early as well. You know, the buzz takes a while to wear off. I was at the Emirates for a while doing some of the sort of post-match reaction, and it was just an amazing atmosphere. It was one of those where, quite often with Arsenal women, the crowd can go a bit flat when they play at the Emirates because it's that bigger stadium. The chants don't carry as much. Maybe people are there just to visit the Emirates or it's their first game. But I think last night there was a real feel of the fans knew how much was riding on everything and like every tackle, every set piece, everything was getting celebrated and then the goals as well. And Arsenal did a really good job of building up the atmosphere. And I think overall Arsenal should have scored more. It got nervy at the end. Big celebrations at the end. It's not often we see Renée Slegers maybe that animated, players running onto the pitch. There was a lot at stake in this game, and Arsenal got the job done in the end. So yeah, an enjoyable night at the Emirates overall for me. Maybe not so much for Hridyam, but we're both at university together. I've got to say it was lovely us both being able to make the journey down and share that experience, even though we were on different sides.
Yeah, Hridyam, how was it for you? How did you see the crowd react to different situations, support Arsenal in particular? How was it being on the ground level?
Yeah, I think I mean I've been in the UK for almost 2 years now, and this might be the best atmosphere I've seen. Very good. I think as Freddie said, every single touch that Arsenal had, every single tackle, every single shot, it was all being celebrated by the fans, and yeah, I think they just really got behind them. Renee spoke before the game that the atmosphere will have an impact, and it certainly did, and. Madrid just sort of looked very flushed, if that makes sense, because I think it wasn't so much the occasion that got to them, but it was the fans that were, so behind the team they were facing. It was just like I think it was too much for them as well, and obviously the setup didn't really help, which we'll probably get into at some point. But yeah, I mean, even though we lost, it was a very good experience. As Freddie said, didn't enjoy the game, but did enjoy covering the game. I think that yeah, it's a very good experience apart from the result.
Yeah, and I mean, in the build up to the game as well, I think Arsenal posted some clips, some videos about, just hyping it up, just hyping up the occasion that, they and created that anticipation that they are going to make that comeback in the quarterfinals again. So, it it did give a sense of this game being a very big deal, and the fans and the club alike, they knew that something magical can happen at the at the Emirates, and it did. So kudos to them, I guess. But yeah, so we'll get into the game, I guess. The first leg, pitch being a big talking point in the first leg, but apart from that, we spoke, Freddie, you were here. We discussed about Arsenal setup, and we discussed what mistakes they made, because last time out they started with both Russo and Blackstenius up front, with no direct threat of either Kelly or Food. But this time around, that was changed. Mariona moved into the midfield with Kim Little, but it was Food and Kelly both starting. Russo was the only one up front. And Manam was in the lineup as well, which we discussed that maybe she could have made a difference last time out. How did you see those changes? Like, was that a big part of what Arsenal were trying to do in this game? Because given the game just before this against Liverpool, that sort of had a similar approach with high intensity, high press with direct players on the flanks as well. So what do you make of these changes and this setup from Renée in the second leg?
Yeah, I think it proves that the first leg definitely wasn't all down to the pitch, because if it was fully down to the pitch, then you would have expected her maybe to name an unchanged team and said these are the best players I want to put out there. But actually, the Liverpool game was perhaps a case of correcting what went wrong. The two players, Kelly and Ford, who came on at half time in Madrid, both start, and then that ends up proving to be a dress rehearsal for the second leg against Madrid. And it obviously helps that Liverpool and Madrid have some similar attributes, but it's some clever management as well, I think, to back your team. And I wonder whether also she told them on Saturday saying you're also going to be the same starting lineup against Madrid, and whether they were aware of that or whether she kept that to us later on in the week, because it did become it was sort of the perfect step up, if you like, to building up the intensity to Wednesday night. And the press was something that Arsenal got right on Saturday, and it got better and better. It reminded me of sort of Jurgen Klopp's, when you think of Jurgen Klopp's best teams at Dortmund and Liverpool, that's sort of when they just got that will to hunt down every single ball. And again, the atmosphere plays a massive part. And I think it really did. There's a massive difference in playing at the Emirates, and players say they can't hear each other as well. They can't hear the manager as well. That was probably different last week, where it's probably a little easier at those smaller grounds with the smaller crowds. And I think Renée was spot on in saying this is something we can look to catch Madrid out with. So yeah, I think the only big decision I was looking at was in midfield, whether Renée would go back to the more reliable, if you like, Little and Balti or a Cooney cross, but she stuck with Mariona, and I think that really paid off. Her movement was so fluid. She was obviously, as we spoke about last week, she was so up for the game as a former Barcelona player. Mornham staying in as well, another very fluid performance, sort of dropping in, and the wingers swapping quite frequently as well, Kelly and Ford, and Kelly sort of, once she settled on that right side and just put those crosses in, that it was clear that was going to be Arsenal's line of attack. And I just think Arsenal are a better team with Alessia Russo up front. And as we talked about last week, they have two really good options to play in that number 10 role who are better at that than Russo. Russo's their best striker, and she proved it last night. So yeah, Renée getting things spot on, and that Liverpool game came in very handy in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree about the lineup changes. I was very critical of it in the first leg as well. I think Renée got it wrong, and I think she fixed her mistakes in the second leg. Talking about making mistakes and fixing them, Real Madrid were coming into this on the back of a historic Clásico win after 18 straight losses and everything. It was a big occasion. The team stepped up really well. It wasn't a fluke win. We scored 3 against Barcelona at their home. So a big deal. There was a lot of momentum behind this side, 2 big wins against big opposition. But in this game, I think right from the get-go, the approach and everything, it felt off. Kanita, what did you make of the lineup from Toril in this one? Because we know Leupolz is out, so there was obviously going to be one forced change at least, and it was Atenea coming in for Leupolz, and the rest remained the same. So what did you make of it, and do you think the lineup in itself was right and the approach was wrong, or do you spot any other mistakes with the setup?
Yeah, honestly, I don't have had many thoughts on the lineup. I mean, I think Hridyam knows that I got the lineup right for the prediction, like 100% right. I knew Like you just put Atenea on for injured Leupolz and that's it, and that's what I thought he would do. I didn't think much of it. I mean, after Arsenal, after the last week game and a very very similar lineup, and Arsenal making so many subs that well changes. I was really, this might not go well, but I want to add on something that you guys said about the pressure of the atmosphere. It was very weird. I think the mentality for this game was off for many factors. First of all, that the team celebrated hard that El Clasico, and you don't understand how hard because it hasn't really gotten out to the social media that much. But because that game was like 12 p.m. game, and they returned to Madrid the same day. The fans waited them at Valdebebas, the training ground, for the bus to arrive. And then when they arrived, then they were like, they just passed, the bus just passed, and then the fans waited for them outside to come out with their cars. So as they were coming out, they were like screaming, and some of them, like, I know that Brun was going outside of her window and like, "Ooh, yeah, just celebrating with the fans or something." So the fans, both the fans and the team was really pumped after the Clásico win. So I don't know what got into their head after that Clásico win. I think as the time passed by, like the day before the game, for me, I thought, okay, this might be a problem. This definitely would be a problem. And I know I mean, I was even emotionally hungover from the El Clasico, but I was like, oh, damn, I don't know what the team is thinking. And the whole atmosphere on the Emirates, I don't know. Obviously, with this Clásico win and this whole atmosphere on the Emirates, it definitely is a huge factor. But the atmosphere itself alone, is not, because I mean they played on uh Camp Nou in front of 90,000 people, and the pressure. I mean, yeah, fine, we lost 5-2, but it was a good game. It was genuinely a good game. And we were a young team, like 2 years old, not even 2 years old. So yeah, I don't know. Like the pressure alone is not only that, but the whole mentality with the Clásico, and that's just crazy. I don't know was going on inside their heads, but I know that I was just pissed to see, like, they had such a this chance, like, show to the board that, okay, if we'd gone through to the semifinals, we maybe could have actually opened Bernabeu after getting to semifinals and beating Barcelona. So I don't know, missed opportunity, obviously, a lot of missed opportunities in this game, obviously, but
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up. And with them, I would like to take your opinion as well. Do you think there was an element of being hungover from that Barcelona win in this game? Did you feel that as well?
I mean, could be. Obviously, like, I don't really know. I think that they started the game off knowing that they have to play on the back foot. The approach in some ways was like a bit, similar to what they did in the last two games, but they just completely messed up half of the things that they did right in the last two games. And I think that maybe they did get some, like, a bit complacent that, what, we did it against Arsenal the first leg, we did it against Barcelona in those conditions. Maybe we can do the same thing now. So yeah, maybe Kanita's right. Maybe it had, a big impact on that as well. But I was just like a bit shocked at how late we started switch things up, because it was clear from the 58th, 59th minute when Arsenal scored their third goal that it's not working, and there was no reaction from the players, which is the biggest, I think, concern for me. Not just the players, but also also Toril, because there was no movement from the bench. There was Toril was just standing with his hands in his pocket doing nothing. And it was just really frustrating to see as a fan first that, you're in this incredible position where you could possibly get the Bernabeu open for a potential semi-final, but you just don't give the effort that you've given in the last two games. And then, Toril after the game, he's like, we're just coming off of the back of two really intense matches, and I'm like, yeah, and what, like, what I mean, like this is you can't be more motivated than
Yeah.
you should, but you should have been in this game. And it just kind of pissed me off that, what, like, this is not a good excuse. This is not a good look for you, for the team, for anything, that you're just blaming it on two really intense games. Because if you want to be the best, if you want to go further in this competition, you're gonna have to face a lot of really intense games in a row. There's no debating that. And just the fact that he, as always, by the way, deflected every single criticism that the press had for him, just, it really bothered me.
Typical.
Yeah, and you're right about, not the in-game management was really off. We made our first sub in some last 15 minutes. We made our first sub in the 76th minute, in fact, which, for a team that is now 3-0 down at inside 60 minutes, you want some proactiveness. And especially, even if we weren't 3-0 down by the 60th minute, the first half was in itself a big worry, a big sign of worry for the team, because we were sitting back and inviting Arsenal all over us. And, they did. Like, Arsenal came at us all guns blazing right from the kickoff. They were pressing us high. They were winning the ball high up the pitch, and putting those crosses in, which we found really difficult to deal with. And even if we managed to deal with the crosses, they had two direct players in Ford and Chloe Kelly, who were going at our fullbacks constantly and testing them out. So, this change in approach was, you have a 2-goal lead, but you are playing an entire 90 minutes. This isn't a game state thing where you are leading by 2 goals in the same game. This is an entire different field. So this setup was a bit baffling to me. But let's give some credit to what Arsenal did as well, and let's try to understand what they did on the pitch, really, because Freddie, like, it was very clear that, that high press was there, and it really worked in your favor. You guys managed to turn the ball over high up the pitch a lot of times, and especially like Mariona was at the heart of it a lot. And you mentioned the switching of the wings, which kept, testing wingers, our fullbacks with different things, because, Food approaches things differently, and Chloe Kelly likes to run to the byline and put those crosses in, likes to generate that sort of space. The first goal in itself, Food carries the ball from the left through the middle and then sprays it out to Chloe Kelly. So, these three players in particular were involved a lot. Manam also helped by always providing, like, having that sort of focal point in attack. Even if Russo was dropping deep, she was holding the lineup and at times making runs in behind as well. So what did you make of Renée's setup, and what was the highlight for you in this game from an Arsenal point of view?
Oh, good question. Yeah, it's hard because I think if one of those Alessia Russo goals that was disallowed goes in, she's never scored a hat-trick for Arsenal before. Would have been obviously her first Champions League hat-trick. I think that would have really sealed it. I was very pleased. I said to Kanita before we went on air that I was talking on our podcast this week about how good Arsenal are at scoring goals in quick succession, and they have. I still am yet to do the proper research and the maths on it, but they are really, really effective. And again, the atmosphere plays a part in it. It was the same against Liverpool, but scoring sort of twice in 3 minutes and 3 goals in 13 minutes on a night like this, are so crucial. And I think that's why Arsenal fans still remain quite confident at halftime, because you always know with 2-0 you only need to get one to get back in the game. But I just loved how Arsenal always kept the ball moving. It was the short sort of one-touch passes. It was quite different to a Jonas Eidevall display in that regard, in the fact that when Arsenal got in and around the penalty penalty area. They kept the ball moving. They moved it out wide. There was a lot of sort of dummies, a lot of step overs. Mariona was everywhere. She was sort of popping up in the pockets on the left and the right. And then Arsenal aren't a massive crossing team. That's not usually where a lot of their goals come from. So I like the fact that they had the game awareness to think, actually, the space is opening up for us, particularly on the right side. Kelly's finding a lot of joy. And the reason Arsenal didn't get that breakthrough is because the likes of Russo in the middle and Caldente, Arsenal aren't a crossing side. So they weren't used to being able to actually get on the end of so many quality deliveries. A lot of them were in towards the back post, and Arsenal didn't quite have a runner in. They didn't have Ford maybe committing that late run. So whatever small adjustments they made at half time really paid off, whereas Real, straight away are undone by two crosses, and that strikes of really poor management from Madrid, because Arsenal have thought, actually, we need a tiny tweak here and we'll be able to get ourselves right into the game, because the crosses just from Kelly in particular were so crucial. But the fact that Olga and Real Madrid weren't able to latch onto that a bit quicker, it absolutely cost them in the end.
And I was looking at the numbers to just see how many crosses Arsenal attempted in this game, and Arsenal attempted 37 crosses in this game. And you know how many Real Madrid attempted in the entire game? 3. None of them successful. Arsenal had 37 crosses, which for me, with a team that has Chloe Kelly on the pitch, I think you have to go for those crosses, because with England, with City previously as well, we have seen how effective she is with those crosses from wide areas, and those balls at the far post were very difficult to deal with. I mean, we had no clue how to deal with them. Nobody was marking at the far post. Nobody was tracking the runners from outside the box. So it was a very poor setup, and to just give an idea to the listeners about the level of domination that sort of Arsenal demonstrated, and how poor Madrid were, to speak in the same sentence. Arsenal had 46 touches inside the opposition box compared to Madrid's just 5, which over a course of 90 period, this is not an actual depiction of the difference in quality between the two sides. I don't think so, and I refuse to believe anyone who tries to convince me that this is the level of difference between the two sides. I think the approach was entirely wrong. But in the post match, when asked about this, Toril came up with saying that we were missing key players, and the key players in midfield especially. We have 2 big players missing for this one, right? Like, Tere is out of the season. She wasn't even a consistent part of the lineup. She used to be in and out of the starting lineup. So let's remove her. But the one player that is missing in the second leg, who started in the first leg, is Leupolz, right? And maybe we in the big games previously, we have seen Toril sort of start with 4 midfielders. That has been the go-to, with Weir, Angeldal, Leupolz, and Toletti all starting, and we couldn't do that in this game. So Hridyam, do you think that played a part, and that is a valid excuse? Not having Leupolz had such a big impact that Real Madrid could not string together like a sequence of 5 passes in this game. Do you think that's a valid reason?
No, because I think obviously Leupolz is a very big miss, right? You can't not miss a player like her, but it just kind of bothered me that how Madrid set up was with 2 midfielders, and where was more of a striker partner with Brune, rather than being a midfielder herself. And the main part was when Madrid had possession, there was no one in the middle. Like, it was Toletti dropped deep in between the 2 centre backs, and Angela was roaming around, not in the midfield, not coming short, but she was waiting for the long ball, waiting for something to happen, Toletti to play a long ball to someone in the wings, and that did not happen. And I think I talked about this on the podcast with Freddie earlier this week, that having a winger come in for a midfielder would obviously, relinquish so much control that you have when you start four midfielders, usually in the big games. And I I don't know, I was expecting at some point to, even if there's a 17-year-old on the bench who did play in the first leg, you bring her on, if you don't have any other option, if that's your only option and she did well, bring her on. What could get worse? You could lose 4-0 instead of 3-0. Like, you're behind anyway. I think having the extra infielder and dropping where deep would have helped with the control a little bit, but Toril uh, made his changes too late, and the changes were not enough. And he could give the excuse that we didn't have, a couple players, and that's fair. But at the end of the day, he could have done a lot better than what he did. So I was really pissed off at at the way he set up.
And yeah, I mean, while watching the game, something that I kept wondering, if you've not got loopholes, if you can't field four midfielders in a big away game, and you want to defend, you want to protect that 2-0 lead over the course of a 90-minute. I think why not start with five defenders, right? Like, we have Antonia on the bench. We could have started her. It could have been a back three. It would have helped us defend those crosses better, maybe. We would have had an extra player defending that far post, which we struggled to defend all game. So why not that? That was my biggest question. So Kanita, do you think that approach could have worked? It would have allowed us more bodies to defend in the box, and do you think that would have helped us in this approach? And maybe the execution of this could have been better than it was.
I I don't know, like this would be a formation change, an obvious one, and I don't know, could have worked. Sometimes these experiments do work like abruptly in a big game. I don't know, I would be skeptical about it. But I think that I think we wanted to channel our inner A-bar a bit too much, and we failed miserably because at least when A-bar does it, they score and then they keep the lead. We didn't even score in this game, and we tried to keep the lead. And I was live tweeting this game, and if you notice throughout the first half, I was just like, good news. Our defense is good, holding up well, which they were in the first half. Like, generally, they were like, I didn't have many issues with that. But I was like, bad news. We have to keep this going because it didn't look like we were going to not continue letting them attack. And that's, I was like, yeah, we're not gonna last long. And, I was right. As soon as the second half started, we conceded. And as soon as we conceded that first goal, I knew it was over because there was a blow in the beginning of the second half. We had almost 45 minutes to go, and I knew we would be losing. The whole thing, we were defending the whole time, and the only like chance we had was in 41st minute. That was our only shot. It was a shot on target too by Angeldal, and until 93rd minute we had the corner something, yeah, and we had like continuous free shots there. So
Yeah.
41st minute to 93rd minute, we didn't have anything. We basically didn't attack at all. I mean, obviously, kudos to Arsenal. They neutralized us as well. It was due to the pressing us. They were forcing us out wide as well. And they were also making us feel so frustrated and send some very odd, random long balls which would never reach anyone. We'd lose possession, and in midfield even we didn't have to try to make a pass. We'd lose possession, especially Angeldal was slow in turns, and it was very easy to get the ball away from her. So um we had no control in midfield. I think for this game, like at least like early second half, maybe after the second goal, could have gotten Irune on. She has this control, and she has just turned 17 the other day, but she has this control. She's played for the first team lately, and I know what she can do. And with an uncontrollable midfield, I think we couldn't have lost anything by bringing a 17-year-old in. So yeah, I don't know about the formation change though. I don't know how that would have worked, but I think I would be rather more for that than whatever this approach was, the A-bar thing.
Yeah. Hridyam, do you feel the same? Do you feel like starting with a third center back would have helped, or do you think it was just the a very passive approach that killed us in this game?
I mean, I think it was a passive approach, but also, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think the first half, when when Arsenal were crossing the ball, I think like the players kind of expected it, whereas in the second half they started crossing it a bit earlier than usual, and I think that had an impact on how Madrid reacted to that, because there was like in every single attack they had in the second half, there was always some space between Mendes and Shea, I think, and that was just constantly being um targeted, and obviously like Olga was leaving so much space to Chloe Kelly, and just she had one, two, three, four, five of those sequences where she could have closed her down, but nothing happened, and I think that I have so much to say. Everything's like in the end, just coming at once. And I think that there's one thing that you could do with another centre back. Maybe that would have helped close the gaps down a little bit, as a in those goals. But then you also lose something I don't know, because if you don't start Athenia, because I think she came back to defend quite a bit, and that's the only things that she was able to do well. Um, I don't know how much you lose on the defensive side of things in that sense, if you don't have that much coverage on the wings. Maybe that it didn't really pan out anyway. There was also one thing which I noticed that Toril didn't, was that the first leg, Linda was always the outlet, like always,
Yeah.
every single chance that Real Madrid had came through that left side. This time Arsenal did so well to close that down. I think Linda and Ware combined had 7 touches in the first 25 minutes of the game, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working in the first half. It wasn't working in the second half. Nothing changed, and I think if you want to beat Arsenal, you have to do these sort of like changes in the game, and like man management. Oh, sorry, like just proper game management, probably. And I think that didn't really happen. Everything that we did in the first half continued in the second half. There was no change. There was no control. There was no attacking intent, and just yeah, I don't know, if we have another centre back, maybe we'd be in a better position. But at the same time, that wasn't the only issue. I think there was issues in every single aspect of the playing field, and yeah, I think that I do think that Renée, if she came on, that would have been a bit better, because that wouldn't be the reason that Madrid lose.
Yeah.
I don't think bringing a 17-year-old player on the pitch would make you lose more than you're already losing, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think Toril would not show that courage, especially in a big game. And yeah, I just think that there was the whole game plan was just completely wrong. And yeah, way too deep, by the way. Just like, I'm just gonna say one more thing. Just they were sat way too deep, and there was so much miscommunication between Olga and Brune as well. They were constantly arguing in the first half, and she kept. I think Brune was talking about the crosses, and as well as not marking. I think it was Kelly or Fox, and Brune just kept like going at Olga about it, and she just didn't. She just had her arms up open like that, and then yeah, that was one thing that I noticed, which I should have probably tweeted about. But yeah, was not happy about the way we set up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of the worst games Olga has played for us. I think she was completely out of it, and she has looked bad coming up against these tricky wingers, be it Caroline Graham Hansen, be it Chloe Kelly in this game. She has struggled coming up against these sort of players, and that was very evident in this game. It was a really poor showing from her. And also, I feel like in possession, there was this forced urgency on us, even though like I get that, you know, Arsenal were pressing, they were forcing that issue, but at times this was completely our own doing, where we were rushing into passes, we were trying to move the ball quickly forward without having any outlet when we have sat too deep. As you mentioned, we were set up too deep, and we had no outlet, and we were still trying to play those vertical balls very quickly. And I think that was a big issue in us having zero control, despite having, you know, three midfielders. And if you include Linda Caicedo in that as well, Linda Caicedo does help you control possession a lot better as an outlet or while dropping deep. So we were not able to use that. And I think, I don't know what it was, but it was just a very, very poor showing. In a few occasions that, you know, a handful of occasions that we did manage to breach their final third and test them. I think one of those times was in the first half after the 40th minute, where, you know, we had a shot which was saved, and then it was Linda's shot from very close range that was saved. It was called offside later on, but uh, you know, maybe that shot in the first leg would have gone in with Zinsberger, but this time I think Domselaar was brilliant, even though she wasn't called into action a lot. But the two times or the couple of times here and there where she did, I think she was excellent. And yeah, I mean, Freddie, what do you make of it? Do you think, like, even though she wasn't as involved in the game and wasn't tested as much, but the couple of times that she did, because if that 41st minute strike goes in, the game state changes completely, and now Arsenal are down by 3 goals. So how big of a save do you think that was from Daphne? And she has been doing good. And what did you make of her? How much of a difference did she make?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think to have conceded there after playing so well would have been a massive setback for Arsenal too, to have created so many chances, having so many crosses with no one on the end of them, and then to concede in that style. I think her save at the end is really important as well. As much as Linda should do better, it's still, you know, you've got to be switched on. Everyone in the ground, you know, is terrified at that point. You know, are we going to go to extra time? And she just keeps her cool, and she did well to deal with the rebound as well. But yeah, it's a really good save. I think you're right. And Zinsberger potentially doesn't save it, but you've also got the pitch to take into equation. If that skims through a muddy pitch in the first leg, you know, then it becomes a more difficult task for the goalkeeper. But you know, again against Liverpool, so she sits out the previous 2 games, obviously including the first leg due to concussion. Liverpool didn't have a shot on target, so she's literally stood and watched for the whole day on Saturday as well. Stood and watched for the entire first half and most of the second half, and then still pulled off those really important saves. And it was really interesting, Renée Slegers saying after, you know, this is what Arsenal goalkeepers need to do, because in a lot of games you aren't going to be tested too much. You know, a lot of the best goalkeepers almost down the WSL, in my opinion, the underrated ones, are the ones who play for the teams down the bottom, because they are the ones who are tested week in, week out, who make all of the saves. And a lot of the time, you know, we're on the other end of that as Arsenal. So yeah, crucial from her. She's become, you know, Arsenal's #1 quite quickly this season after that season with Aston Villa, which obviously has turned into a really good move for her. And yeah, there's been no looking back basically since she's got into the team. The only concern I had at first was her kicking, and she seems to have really ironed that out as well. And a huge save before half time.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did help Arsenal's cause by keeping the scoreline intact in that first half. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this is the third time Arsenal are doing this sort of comeback from 2 goals down to go on and win in the second leg. And you know, Arsenal have this history of winning the Champions League as well, once the only English side to do it. Still, and they have made, like, this is their 8th semi-final, if I'm not wrong. So you know, they have that experience. And it really showed with the fans behind them. and they are going to be facing another one of those big sides in women's football, arguably the biggest side in women's football in terms of history and everything, which is Lyon. And the interesting aspect about this is Lyon is currently being managed by Joe Montemuro, a former Arsenal manager. So how do you think this one plays out, Freddie? Do you think, I mean, obviously you have to believe that Arsenal have a fair shot of this, but how do you think, how big of a challenge will that be facing Lyon, and how will it be facing Montemuro?
Yeah, it is a big challenge. I think you have to make Lyon the favourites. They've been here so many times in this situation, and when you even skim through their lineup, I haven't had the chance to watch either legs of the Bayern game because we've been covering the Arsenal game on the same day. But when you skim across the pitch, there are very few weaknesses, that are obvious, and I need to do do a bit more Lyon watching before the game. We've got a few weeks to do that, but they are, all across the pitch. But what stands out to me is the pace at the moment, is that front three of Chewinga, Demone, and Diani. It's a bit of a Lyon side in transition at the moment with sort of Le Sommer and Hegerberg, and some of the more experienced players maybe playing a little bit less, and some of the newer signings playing more, some of the younger players playing a bit more. So it's interesting to see how sort of Montemuro is managing them, and I'm looking forward to sort of doing my homework on them over the next few weeks. But I think it's interesting you talk about the comebacks, because the first leg will be at the Emirates. Arsenal have done really well in terms of picking up maybe less than ideal results away from home, but knowing exactly what they've got to do in the second leg. They did it turning it around against Bayern, so nearly doing it against Wolfsburg those 2 seasons ago. Even in qualifying, they lost to Häcken away, came back and won that at home, and then last night as well, where the atmosphere played a real part. So for this to now be flipped around, and Arsenal playing the first leg at home, where even if they get quite a positive result, it's almost actually how positive a result do you need to be able to back yourself to then go to Lyon. But of course, the last time Arsenal went to Lyon, they won 5-1 under Yoda Seideval, which is still just one of probably one of the craziest results in the club's history. So yeah, really looking forward to the game. I think there'll be two sides who match up quite well. As I say, you make Lyon favourites. I'd probably, will be good to have the first leg at home, but Lyon are going to be very strong in that second leg. So if they can come to North London and get anything, it's going to be really difficult for Arsenal. Joe Montemuro is still very much a popular figure with definitely some of the Arsenal journalists I was speaking to yesterday. I think he did come across Renée Slegers as well. I think they had some sort of work together while he was in charge, or at another stage. I need to read more into that, but it'll certainly be interesting on multiple aspects. Danielle van der Donk as well, coming up against her former club. So yeah, it's Arsenal are on the nicer side of the draw. I've just watched Barcelona thrash Wolfsburg over 2 legs, and yeah, that 5-1 win still lives long in the memory. So you never know, but I would make Lyon would make Lyon favourites.
Yeah, I mean, having watched Lyon play against Bayern, I don't think like Bayern did a good job overall themselves, but I think this Lyon side is so threatening. Like you give them one opportunity, they can go from one end of the pitch to another in like a few seconds, and they have got immense quality off the bench as well. They can bring on Ada Hegerberg, which not a shabby player herself, can score a lot of goals. And I'm particularly looking forward to this game, because I want to see how Arsenal's fullback. I know Emily Fox will do well, but having McCabe come up against Diani consistently on that right hand side is going to be something that it's going to be a fun watch. Let's just put it that way. It's going to be fun watch, and yeah, I mean, I hope the best team wins. Another thing that Hridyam, you mentioned at the start of the pod that we need to discuss, and we'll talk about that after the game. There weren't many players who came out to acknowledge the traveling fans at the stadium, which isn't a good look. And you were at the venue. What did you make of it? Like, what was the situation like? And in a big game when you have lost and you've got your fans there as well. I think it's important, despite the result, for the senior players, for the captains to come out and sort of acknowledge the fans making that effort, because this team, we have to remember that this team is still a little young. We are still trying to They're still trying to establish that sort of relationship with the fans, and acknowledging them on a tough away night like this goes a long way, especially after having those two big games where the fans supported you, where the fans cheered for you, and now you've got a poor result where the fans were still there, but not acknowledging is not definitely not a good look. What did you make of it?
Yeah, so I think it was just after the game, there were so many players that had already gone to the locker rooms, and there were it wasn't um so there was a group in the middle, just with the coaches, and there was a few youth players, and I think four first team players, if I'm not wrong. I'm not wearing my glasses at the moment. But yeah, so there were a handful of fans, like a respectable amount, I think, for a away game in midweek. Very good showing for this young team, and it just baffled me that there was only four players from the first team that went up to greet the fans, and that was also like so far into the after the final whistle. It was like it wasn't everyone's around. The four of those players go in. It was like there was a big gap in the middle, and I think Freddie also texted me during that time that are there any players going to greet the fans? And I'm like, I hope so, but I can't see it happening because it's just it was really I thought it was really poor. And just looking at my post now, I think there's so many fans online that have slated Olga, they've slated the other captains, and rightfully so, I think, because you've got so many fans that are at the ground supporting you in an as I said, midweek in England, and you just don't bother because you've lost a game. And I think if anything, you lose the way you lose, that should prompt you to, especially greet the fans, because you haven't given them neither the result nor the performance to be happy about. So I think going up to them and actually greeting them, maybe apologizing to them, that would have gone a long way, as you said. But yeah, it was shocking from them. I really, yeah, I was really, really unhappy with that.
Yeah, Kanita, what do you make of that situation? And you have seen the outrage online as well from the fans, the reaction from the fans, and I think you have rightly put it that it's valid. What do you make of it, Kanita? The whole situation.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. It was Weir, Redondo, Toletti, Feller. Then we have Carla and the Academy girls. So, yeah, it's I agree 100% with Hridyam here. Like, it's I didn't know it was that far away from the final whistle. Like, even they waited even that long for even this batch of players to come to them and acknowledge them, which is I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I understand the disappointment, but I don't understand after such a poor performance from the entire team to not just come out and apologize, you know. What's worse for me, and everyone is saying this, that none of the captains showed up, like
Yeah.
not Olga, not Misa, not Atenea. So these are like the captains that were available for this match, and you know, poor performances from all three as well, and bad result. And you could have at least, acknowledged your traveling fans. They've come a long way. And yeah, I mean, in on the Emirates, and I mean, in front of 22,000 people, to have at least some batch of your own fans supporting you, it's really disappointing. I don't know. I didn't really expect them. I mean, yeah, they had 90 minutes to get their shit together. Honestly, they had it, and when they didn't, they could have at least said sorry.
Yeah. Uh, well, I don't have anything to add to it. I do agree with both of your thoughts, and I echo them as well. But yeah, I think over the two legs, Arsenal definitely the better side and the deserved side to go through. We will be bystanders now for the rest of the Champions League. Another missed opportunity where from 2-0 up, we have lost a tie. So yeah, the season basically is over. I mean, if you want to believe there's a title race, you can, 4 points gap with Barcelona. You can still hope for that. Maybe magically Barcelona lose all their players and lose the next games or something. But yeah, in reality, the season is basically over. It's another season without a trophy, but more than a trophy, I think after the sort of week that we had, I think winning this tie or just maybe able to get away without losing this tie would have just been the best week in Real Madrid's history. But it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, so again, congratulations, Freddie, and to your team. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks a lot, Hridyam, for covering the game from pitch side and being on the pod for the first time. We'd love to have you any other time as well, whenever you are on pitch side, or if you are available, you can always hop on and we can chat about that. So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of this pod. Once again, Freddie, thank you very much for agreeing to do this, and I'm sure you're one happy party right now. The only happy party on this panel at the moment. So yeah, we will be back with another episode when we play next. I think the international break is also around the corner now for the women's side, and hopefully it's an injury-free one. That is all I can hope. I hope all our players finish the season well, and let's hope that Real Madrid finish the season strongly, and we'll be back. So until next time, Hala Madrid.
Hala Madrid.